year of theology, juniors apply the critical thinking skills that they've developed in the last 2 years to their own faith journeys, to the Catholic Church, and to their own Catholic faith, right? So one way they do this is through examining the theme of science and religion. So we start with their own faith journeys. So each student has to identify what is God in their own life, right? So we all have something that we focus our life around, whether we call that God, whether we call that science, family, friends, whatever it is. This thing acts in the place of God in our life, and our religion is really focused around it. It's directing our lives towards this thing. So students have to identify this in their life, right? Critically examining their own life. What do my choices say that my God is, even if I say I am Christian or whatever I say that I am? What do I actually act as if my life is centered around? So then they move to examining their Catholic faith, or our Catholic faith, or whatever faith students come into the class with, right? So for example, we look at tensions between science and the Catholic faith. So you see here an example of the Quaestio exercise that we do with them. And here, students are challenged to think of the biggest contradictions between science and religious faith. And they have to give arguments that science and religion contradict, right? That they are not compatible. And then they're going to respond to them, of course, but the idea is that they have to be able to see the argument from the other side. They can't just take one side in an argument. Just like in sophomore year, where they're seeing multiple sides to an argument, and that's leading up to a class debate. Here in junior year, they see both sides, and they're able to then respond to arguments that science and religion contradict. So for example, students, one of the popular ones is Adam and Eve, right? What about Adam and Eve versus evolution? Doesn't the Bible say that human beings were created, in one fell swoop from nothing? And then evolution says that we evolved from primates and other animals further down. And so students look at the arguments and they realize that that argument only makes sense if we read the Bible literally. But if we look at the actual evidence, at the two creation stories in Genesis, we can't read them literally because there are two creation stories and they contradict each other. So the Bible itself is showing us evidence that it cannot be read literally. It has to be read in some other way. And students are able to see that and respond to the arguments that science and religion contradict, both in that case and in other cases. And then they look at the history of the Catholic Church as well. So you see this other example here, Galileo on trial. Students critically examine the church's history to see where the church both succeeded in its mission to make disciples of all people, and where it's failed, right? Where it hasn't quite met that bar. And so students examine this. So for example, in this exercise here, they take the place of attorneys on Galileo's side and on the church's side, of the judge and of the jury. And they decide, do they think Galileo is guilty of heresy, and make that decision, right? What should be the punishment?